Prepare to experience the by law. Secrets will be revealed. Myths dispelled. From the studio gym where excuses never apply, it's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Superhuman Radio. We have a great show planned for you today. We're talking about training, but we're talking about nutrition as well with Dr. Mike T. Nelson today, a returning guest, friend of the show. Before we get into that, I have to say our title sponsor is going to let me give away some sweet rolls. If you haven't heard the news, Legendary Foods, who is our title sponsor, created a new healthy snack. Less than 1 gram of sugar, 20 grams of protein. You know the drill. I sound like Biden. You know the deal. 4 to 5 net carbs. They are amazing. They don't taste like they don't have sugar in them, especially the cinnamon. So these sweet rolls look like Cinnabons, you know, that cinnamon roll. They have chocolate, they have berry, and they have cinnamon. And you'll think you're eating a Cinnabon. If you put it in the microwave for about 10 to 15 seconds, you'll swear this can't be sugar-free. They're so friggin' good. It's unbelievable. The Tasty Pastry was amazing, but the Tasty Pastry is going to move over. And we are not only going to be able to offer you Tasty Pastries at the discount, 10% off when you use the code SHR10, but also if you go to their website, shrnetwork.biz/legendary. That takes you to a special page that allows you some discounts and some special offers. And we are going to be giving away. Remember when I used to do the secret word? We're going to be doing it again. I heard from Bruce Cardenas yesterday. He is their PR director over there, and he's going to let us give away some sweet rolls. So this is going to be exciting. So the way it works is there's a secret word hidden in the show, usually around somewhere in the commercial break. And then you email on air at superhumanradio.net with the secret word. And last time we gave away the snacks to everybody who emailed it. So it was pretty exciting. So stay tuned for that. And without further delay, I bring my friend. I call him my friend. I've known him for so long now. He's been on the show numerous times. Let me open his mic. Hey, I'm opening Mike's mic. Hey, Mike. How you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you today, Carl?
Wonderful, wonderful. So you have been the lone voice who started to talk about metabolic flexibility way back in the day. And now it's a big thing, and everybody, all the gurus, you know, they creep up out of nowhere, and they're all talking about it. And now you have adapted a new subject. It's not a new subject. Because was his first name Nassim
Taleb?
Nassim Taleb. He was actually on my show, and we talked about his book, then Antifragile. But anti-fragility is an extension of what you have talked about for many, many years. So let's start here first. Those of us who know what metabolic flexibility, let's just give a primer. Metabolically flexible means that you can go for long periods of time without food and not fall apart and function properly. And this would have been an evolutionary gift, an edict almost, because we can probably say all of our ancestors were metabolically flexible because they went through feast and famine periods. And we are here as evidence that they were metabolically flexible. Would you agree with that statement?
Yeah, I would say that's probably true, right? Because if you were in the Paleolithic times, you may have periods where 12, 24, 36, 48 hours, who knows how long you're out there hunting the woolly mammoth. You're probably not finding a lot of honey. You can only pound the ground for so many tubers. So you've got a long period of fasting. Let's say you're successful, you get the woolly mammoth. Now you've got another part where you have a large influx of food. So your body has to be able to use fat for long periods of time during fasting, and then probably able to use carbohydrates and other food substrates in high amounts also on the other opposite end, and then switch back and forth between those two. So you're good at both ends of the metabolic spectrum.
And you're leveraging what makes us the apex species, because we can, termites can only eat wood.
Yeah.
If they can't find wood, they can't go, well, we'll eat some beef today. Or, we are the hybrid species. We can survive. And I use that word specifically. I'm not necessarily thrive, but the goal was to survive until you could get a hold of what you thrive on. But we could survive on just about anything. We can eat a vegan diet, even though it exposes you to nutrient deficiencies for long periods of time. We can eat all meat all the time. And, 40,000 years of ice age, what do you think was growing? You think there was corn growing during the ice age? We were eating meat and drinking, and we were drinking melted snow. That's what we were doing. Ultimate hybrid species. Isn't that true?
Yeah, I think like the one key factor of humans is that they are extremely flexible, especially in terms of survival, right? Like you said, other animals are very limited on especially food sources. And then now if we even extend that concept into ability to survive under a wide variety of conditions, right? You find humans, we can argue with or without technology, in very extreme environments. Like they're not as extreme as some specialized organisms, but in terms of the ability to do, run fast and do everything to subsistence, hunting, or where you're basically just trying to chase the animal for days on end because we're much better at heat regulation. So we're the most adaptable and flexible organism around.
In fact, according to Dr. Daniel Lieberman, who's been a frequent guest on the show over the years, in the book, The Story of the Human Body, the single greatest adaptation that helped us become an apex predator is that we started to stand up. And what people need to know is when we stood up, we actually lost speed because we were faster, like chimpanzees. We were faster with all fours on the ground. But we gave up speed to stand up because it gave us two advantages. The sun didn't hit us the same way because we were standing up. If you look at a twig standing straight up, it casts a very narrow shadow. You look at that same twig laying down, it casts a much bigger shadow. And so that was the first thing. And then also, we were scary looking standing up. Other creatures looked at us like, what's that? And that really gave us a great advantage. I think that's fascinating. People forget this entirely.
Yeah.
I have a frustration today I have to voice because I have a funny feeling that you're in my camp. I'm using that word camp for specific reason. This phenomenon occurred probably 2 decades ago, but diets have become tribes. And in fact, I hate the use of the word tribe. Someone wanted me to call, you should do superhuman tribe. No, I don't. I don't want that, because tribes put aside critical thinking for doing what the tribe does. And unfortunately, if the tribe is led by an idiot, then everybody becomes an idiot de facto. But I'm so frustrated today with the lion diet, the snake diet, and I'm going to pick on the lion diet because it's the new emerging one. And the guy who's promoting it is the nicest guy, the gentlest guy. He's just a really sweet man. But this idea that we have to look to animals for the way they eat and adapt their style of eating is bullshit. Because lions, if they have a kill, and they'll eat 6 times in a day. So this is not true that lions only eat once a day. It's all about availability and scarcity. And when lions aren't able to make a kill, they can go. This is a distinction. They can go up to 3 days without eating. Do they want to go without eating? No. Because if they have access, they'll eat, like I said, 6 times a day. So, I'm so tired. Humans went for long periods of time without eating. Modernity has given us a refrigerator, a stove, and whimsically we eat every time we think we're hungry or bored. We weren't always like this. We need to return to a more ancestral style of eating. And we don't need a cruise and a membership card and a special name to become part of a tribe to do that. Talk about this. Does it frustrate you as much as it frustrates me?
Yeah, it kind of drives me bonkers because everybody wants to be associated with, okay, if I'm in the keto camp, then carbohydrates must be bad. Or you've got endurance athletes are like, well, you can only use carbohydrates for energy, then, fats are not bad. And the reality is you want to use both. It just depends on what context you're trying to do, right? So one of the things I've tried to do with metabolic flexibility is just look at, from our physiology, what are the 2 main fuel sources we're primarily using? They're fats and carbohydrates. Now, for people who are healthy, you want to be able to use both. Like you said, fasting, you want to use more fat. You can do a ketogenic diet. That can work great. And for some pathologies, that might actually be preferential. But if I want to do more speed and power for athletics, is a ketogenic diet the best idea? No, it's actually a horrible idea for that. However, if I go to the carbohydrate end of the spectrum, do I want the ability to still use fat for long duration and long periods? Yes, I don't want to be stuck only using carbohydrates 100% of the time. So you want to use actually both of them. But like you said, that doesn't put you in any camp per se. Right now you have the carnivore camp, which is like, oh, no, you can just only eat meat. And it's exactly what you said. The fact that we are that metabolically flexible allows us to potentially do a ketogenic approach, potentially do a high carbohydrate approach, potentially do a carnivore approach. If we weren't very metabolically flexible, like none of those would really be that valid of an option.
So the other thing is this idea, there's a therapeutic ketogenic diet that's been approved for treating seizures and some brain cancers. But the ketogenic diet is thought to be, look, you can be vegan and be keto if your calories are low enough and you're managing the time periods and you're using some form of time restricted feeding. I mean, it doesn't have to be 8 on and 16 on. I mean, it's just sensible that your body, if it's metabolically flexible, will kick in and start making ketone bodies for you when you don't have access to carbohydrates. So every diet can be a keto diet. This is nonsense that there's only one way. The other thing is I am getting bigger and stronger, and a lot of my issues that I've been dealing with the past few years have gone away when I stopped doing senseless, long-term, day after day fasting. I eat first thing in the morning. As soon as I wake up, I eat. And now I stop eating earlier. So I'm still honoring like a sensible window of feeding and not feeding. But I've put on more muscle in the past 2 months. And it's because I've just gone back to the way I ate when I was wanting to be a bodybuilder.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have like 6 small meals a day, but I have 3 to 4 meals a day. I focus on my protein first, and I eat green leafy vegetables and stuff like that. I stay away from starchy stuff by and large. And if I am going to eat starches, I stop eating starches after 4 p.m. I don't buy the whole carb backloading. I had that guy on the show years ago when he introduced it. Everybody who tried it said their sleep was wrecked and they became insulin resistant over time. It's like, I don't care. There's a reason that insulin sensitivity is diurnal. And it's not to take advantage of it and eat carbs at night, in my humble opinion. It's because we probably didn't have carbs at night and the sensitivity needed to kick in because we weren't flooding our body with glucose at that time. But I'm eating sensible again. I'm not avoiding. I mean, I eat potatoes. I eat rice. I don't only eat potatoes and I don't only eat rice, but I'm eating sensibly. And if you saw my physique from now to 2 months ago, I've had 2 people at the gym ask me, what am I taking? And look, I take gear. I've been on gear for 20 years. So it's not like I'm doing something with the gear. I take testosterone, a little Deca, and occasionally I cycle in a little Anavar here and there, but nothing crazy. But that hasn't changed. What has changed is I've gone back to a more sensible diet and stopped overly restricting myself either by time or by food type.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. I mean, obviously I'm biased to have the flex diet cert, but the basic point of that is, yeah, hit your protein. For most people, like a good 4x40 approach, 4 meals or 3 meals at 40 grams of protein per meal at a minimum. You can go over that if you want. And then adjust carbohydrates to what you need, have some fat. And then if you still want to add fasting, my bias is take 1 day per week and slowly push it out so you can do around a 19 to 24-hour fast. I think you still get a lot of benefits from fasting. You get a day of low insulin, all the benefits. But if you're really trying to gain muscle and add muscle, it makes no sense to me that you would do very long periods of fasting all the time, right? Because muscle protein synthesis is going to be turned down. Yes, you can lift. You can probably get some benefit from that. But best case scenario, if you're fasting for muscle, it's probably like a neutral day at best, right? So my bias is have more protein, have more muscle protein response most of the days, but still have a day that you're going to have a longer period of fast. You're going to drop insulin. You're going to push the body to use more fat. So again, you're trying to get the best of both worlds without compromising muscle in the process.
One of the reasons I've returned to eating first thing in the morning, and I did this for decades, especially when I was trying to build strength and muscle, is I'm a firm believer of fed state signaling.
Mm-hmm.
So, and this has roots in evolution. When the body thinks it's not going to get a meal, it changes the way it compartmentalizes a nutrition. It'll build more fat because it thinks, wow, this idiot's starving. Like we have to be prepared. But when the body loves, it thrives on regularity. It thrives on schedules. If you eat every single morning, the body thinks life is good. We live in a land of abundance. We don't have to wait for a meal. We get up in the morning and we have this wonderful meal. And I really strongly believe that allows the body to go, muscle is very metabolically expensive, but this guy seems to be able to eat every day. So maybe we will let him go ahead and grow some more muscle. And I swear to God, that's probably at the root of the change in my physique in the past 2 months. Just starting to eat first thing in the morning. I stop by 6 p.m. I'm done chewing my food. And so I have a 3-hour window before I go to bed. But I generally eat again around 7:30 in the morning. And that's an adequate fast right there. I don't believe it has to be 16 hours to turn on sirtuins. I think that's all bullshit. And that's what we do as humans. We take a morsel of truth and then we stretch it to the extent where all of a sudden it's no good for us anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree that in general, if you're trying to prioritize muscle, you would want to break that fast earlier in the morning, right? You want to have some protein, probably have some carbohydrates, depending upon your diet. You want to turn on that muscle protein synthetic response. And in theory, the earlier you do that, you're probably going to be better off, again, if muscle is going to be your main goal. So I don't know, makes sense to me.
Muscle is my main goal because of this. The only research done on humans that shows it to extend lifespan in humans, not C. elegans, not, fungi, not humans, is the acquisition of muscle and strength. The more muscle you have on your body, there's studies that show the more muscle you carry into 65 as a man and into 60 as a woman, your lifespan is predictably longer. And strength is another one. There's so many good studies out there. We talked about the California Veterans Administration study, 20-year study. The strongest men at the beginning of the study, they were alive at the end of the study. The weakest men at the beginning of the study, they died during the study. The guys who got weaker died sooner. I mean, there's a reason that old adages like only the strong survive are accurate, because they were n equals many type observations through hundreds of years. And so I focus on the anabolome. People talk about the microbiome and the anabolome. And I believe strongly that when you stop being able to produce new muscle tissue, you start dying. And I really feel that way. So muscle is most important to me. Yes. All right, let's get back on track. So Antifragile requires you to be metabolically flexible, as we're talking about with nutrition right now. But what about physiology? What can we do to improve the antifragile aspect of our bodies?
Yeah, so the thought process I had probably started around 10 years ago was, if metabolic flexibility is beneficial for metabolism, are there other things we can do related to physiology just as a whole? So the word I coined was just physiologic flexibility. So if we believe, like I'm sure we would agree, the body is very much survival orientated. It's doing everything it possibly can in order to survive. So if we want to live longer, we want to be better, we should probably work and teach the body how to survive better. So once we have our basics done, right, we're doing some exercise, got nutrition, got sleep, what are some of the other areas we should be targeting, right? Because there's no lack of, gurus everywhere telling you this or that thing is the greatest, whatever. So I looked at what regulatory mechanisms does the body have to hold constant, or what's called the homeostatic regulators. So a big one is temperature, right? Our core temperature is 98.6, it's actually 97.7. But if we get a little bit too high or too low from our core body temperature, we're literally going to be in a world of hurt. If that gets too far out of range, we're going to die. However, you can go in a sauna, and we see lots of benefits from exposing your body to heat. Now, cold is kind of a big thing. We do see benefits exposing your body to cold. And we know over time you get better at those things via adaptation. So with the homeostatic regulators, there's 4 of them. You're not necessarily trying to change your core temperature or how that's regulated. You're trying to get a better adaptation being exposed to a wider variety of environments. So can you go and regulate heat better in a hot environment? Can you maybe create a little bit of heat and get better at regulating in a cold environment? So you're expanding this buffer zone around these homeostatic regulators. And it's my bias that that'll then make you more anti-fragile in the process.
Okay, so we're talking about leveraging hormesis or hermetic triggers here.
Correct.
But how far can you go with that? Talib actually used the terminology damage.
Correct.
Damage can only be interpreted as one way. Something is intact, a muscle is intact. You damage a muscle, it grows, it responds. But can we take that approach blanket across the human body and say, if you want to have a stronger spine, you should damage it first?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. So my bias is I like the idea and the concept of hormesis, but exactly what you said, if you look at the definition of hormesis, it generally implies that you had to damage the system a little bit in order for it to respond. So the terminology I like better, which is from Dr. Kelvin Davies, is adaptive homeostasis. So the difference between adaptive homeostasis and hormesis is that adaptive homeostasis, you do not have to damage the system before you get adaptation. So you could be exposed to a very light, let's say, heat stressor, not have any cellular damage. You're preconditioning those cells, right? So you look at some research on cardiac preconditioning, that they receive the signal of heat. They have heat shock proteins. They do all the little magical stuff they do. And the next time you're exposed to that heat, you're a little bit better prepared. But if you do it in an intelligent manner, you did not have to damage any tissue to get that adaptation process. So I think there's a little bit of a difference between the terms.
Heat shock proteins have always fascinated me. I literally did my first show on them in 2006 because I heard that heat shock proteins can amplify muscle protein synthetic response.
Yeah, potentially.
Yeah. And so I've always wondered if heat shock proteins are released or created as a response to the frank temperature change of tissue or the brain's the brain's, what do I want to say? The brain's
Interpretation.
interpretation. So in other words, you may find a heat that makes you feel ridiculously uncomfortable and you want to get out of the sauna. I may be able to sit in that sauna because I've adapted to it for longer periods of time. Do we know if the actual heat in tissue is what causes it, or is it the brain's interpretation of the heat? Like, oh man, this is really hot. That would be interesting to find out.
Yeah, the answer is I don't know, but what I've seen a little bit from the research is it's probably a mixture of both, right? Because the brain's interpretation is going to be related to how well you think your adaptation is to heat, right? So if I'm someone who is not very heat adapted at all, you stick me in the sauna with you, my brain's going to go, oh my God, this is horrible. Carl's just hanging out like, this is nothing, right? That signal is probably highly associated with how well am I able to deal with that heat. And we do see some of that with, training and adaptation in all forms. How much of that is related to the response? Hard to say, right? That gets into a lot of, Tim Noakes stuff on central governor hypothesis, and
Right.
the brain is sort of the master regulator of all these complicated signals coming in. And at the end of the day, it's judging and saying, okay, this has gone, too far. We definitely need to do something different, or this is going to impact our survival. So it's I think it's a little hard to kind of tease the two apart, but I would say they're definitely associated with each other.
Well, and I asked Brad Schoenfeld this question once, and I don't know if I asked it incorrectly, but I said to him, do you think it's the perception of fatigue that really does affect muscle versus the actual measurable fatigue at the muscle itself? Because if you come into the gym and you're smoked, you're overtrained, and you work out, and you really are giving it everything you have, and your brain is going, because we know fatigue starts in the brain. It doesn't start in the extremities. We know that there are receptors, 5-HTP receptors in the brain that start to signal you're getting tired. And we know that there are ways to circumvent them with magnets where all of a sudden your strength comes right back again. So it's probably a governor. It's like, we don't want you to hurt yourself. We're going to start shutting things down. So I've always wondered if perception of fatigue plays a role in the ability to build new muscle, as opposed to, oh yeah, I can't move my arms anymore. I'm very refreshed. I slept really good. This is as far as I can go. And I kind of wonder if it's like a combination of both, like you just said with heat shock proteins.
It could be. I mean, most of the data we have I've seen so far is looking at just peripheral fatigue. But again, as a human organism, it's hard to sort these out, right? Exactly what you said with maybe some TMS and some other technology. The old school ones they did were someone would get on a leg press or a leg extension.
Right.
Do leg extensions you can't do anymore.
And then they would take a little halo on their head.
They did put a halo on your head, or they would take a device that would induce a current into the leg. So they would locally stimulate the leg without causing pain with the external stimulation. So you bypass any production of pain.
Sure.
And what they found was they could start doing more leg extensions. So it wasn't the peripheral fatigue that was the only thing limiting it. Your argument then is there must be some, central component to it also. Then they've done some really crazy studies with intrathecal delivery of drugs to block pain. And what you see is you definitely see an increase in performance with that. But a lot of those people could almost push themselves to the point where they literally damaged and destroyed themselves also.
Right.
So it's probably a combination of both. And it's just so multifactorial. It's hard to sort out what is the main thing. Again, probably different for different athletes too.
The most astonishing thing I've ever seen, it was a documentary. I want to say it was like The Perfect Human Diet was the name of the documentary. I saw it probably 6 or 7 years ago. And the thing that fascinated me the most was they went into one of these labs and they had the guy doing leg extensions, as you talked about. And he did he couldn't do any more. So they said, okay, rest 15 seconds and do another one. He did that for a little while. Then he couldn't even do that. And then they had this PEMF unit. It was a pulse electromagnetic field device. And it was round, like a halo. And they said, okay, now do it again. And they put this over the crown of his head, and his leg came right up, and he did like 5 more reps. And I thought to myself, see, the peripheral muscles aren't really what's stopping you from training. It's the perception of fatigue at the brain, because there's central governors there. I know that there's a feedback loop from your heart, where your heart will tell your brain, this guy's going to kill himself, shut him down. And the brain will cause you to not be able to run anymore, or cave in or give into it. So I really think the brain plays a really big role. And especially when we're talking about anti-fragile. I mean, you have people that cower at the in fact, I spoke to a group of doctors once and told them that the greatest value of resistance training is the ability to learn how to manage discomfort. Because as you get old, 64 years old, I got a shitload of pain and problems, and injuries, and and I don't let them bother me. I could easily walk into my doctor's office and ask for painkillers all the time. But once you've lifted heavy weights, and I always go back to the squat, because anybody who's ever lifted 700 pounds or more knows that bar feels like a cheese cutter on your back. I mean, I had a callus for years. I had a callus along my traps and my shoulders from squatting. And that managing that pain is as much of a process as sitting down and getting back up with that weight, because you need to not pay attention to that pain in order to do it, because the pain is excruciating. And I keep coming back to the brain. The brain is so magnificent. And I really do believe that it gives people the strength that they have. It starts there. You have people that are afraid to feel that, oh, it's uncomfortable, that level of discomfort, So
yeah, and it's also those signals too, right? So if you get down to some of the neurology of it, you get feedback, which is called nociception, right? So nociception goes to the brain, but the brain in terms of pain is an interpretation of the brain, right? So if you're under a super, super heavy squat and you've been used to doing that, you might feel a lot of things that are uncomfortable. You may classify it as pain, but if your brain and you still believe that you are safe and you are used to it, you can probably still perform, right? And you're always riding on that line of, is this discomfort? Is this something where I might damage myself? Because the interpretation of pain is that you may potentially damage yourself. It doesn't mean that you are guaranteed to damage yourself.
Right.
And that's something that especially in weight training, you kind of learn over time where that line is of, okay, yep, this is just discomfort. I think I'm still safe. I can do another rep. Versus, oh shit, I broke something. Like I found the line and there it was.
Let me put this up, because we want to take a first commercial break. So Mike Nelson has been a stalwart in the physical culture community for many, many years, and his contributions are vast, and you can have access to them at miketnelson.com. He's got lots of free literature there that you can download and read. It's all good. Mike is not a zealot. He is all about the science, and he applies the science to his own training and to those who he trains. Go to miketnelson.com, and trust me, you start reading his stuff, you'll be stronger tomorrow. So there you go. We're going to take one quick commercial break. Stay with us, and please post any questions you'd like for those of you watching live. Be right back.
Dogs should be powered by fat and protein, not carbs. That's why Visionary Pet makes low-carb, ketogenic dog food for dogs of all breeds and life stages. From kibble to freeze-dried and even low-carb treats, all Visionary Pet recipes are very low-carb, ketogenic, and made with 100% real meat protein. Shop now and use code SHR for 20% off your first order today. Your dog deserves the lifelong benefits of optimal nutrition. Make the switch to Visionary and see why smart dogs eat low carb.
There are lots of concerns about food supply today. That's why you need White Oak Pastures. White Oak Pastures will deliver food right to your doorstep. You don't even have to go out and be disappointed by shopping in grocery stores. The finest beef, pork, lamb, duck, and more can be found at White Oak Pastures. And now they even have seafood. And best of all, White Oak Pastures has a negative carbon footprint, which means that you don't have to feel guilty for eating your ribeye. Go to shrnetwork.biz/white oak and use the code superhuman to save 15% off. Never before has a product been so appropriately named as Botanic Tonics Feel Free. This plant-based elixir combines a variety of different effective compounds, all from raw plant materials that at different doses provide you with completely different experiences. A third of a bottle puts you in the zone and makes you very focused and is ideal for a non-stimulating pre-workout. It also has a mild analgesic effect for us older lifters who have soreness and little pains and aches that keep us from training as ferociously as we want. A half a bottle will create a mild euphoric effect that will allow you to forego consuming alcohol, but still be socially lubricated and have fun. I have never had a product deliver on its name the way Botanic Tonics Feel Free does, and I won't ever be without it, and you shouldn't either. Go to shrnetwork.biz/feel free and use the code SHR40 for 40% off your first order. I promise you, you will not be disappointed. I would easily say that I am the hugest proponent you will ever meet to doing anything that will improve the quality of my sleep. And that's because sleep is linked to just about every metabolic disorder we see in our population today. One of the easiest things you can do to improve the quality of your sleep is to get a pillow that can be shaped into the exact form factor that allows you to get your best night's sleep. And that is MyPillow. I've been sleeping with MyPillow for a few years now, and I can tell you that when I have to travel and stay in hotels, I don't get a good night's sleep because I don't have MyPillow with me. Right now, you can save up to 60% off of everything offered to improve the quality of your sleep at shrnetwork.biz/mypillow when you use the code SHR. Or you can call toll-free 800-889-4938. And remember to use code SHR to save up to 60% off of everything at their website.
You're listening to the Superhuman Channel. We're ripped and we're ready.
Welcome back. So are there some techniques that you like to use to help people become physically more adapted and anti-fragile? Like maybe some exercise movement or?
Yeah. So the the four categories would be temperature, pH, fuels. Fuels would be metabolic flexibility, and then air. So oxygen and carbon dioxide. Within each one of those, there's different ways you can go kind of above and then below. So we talked about temperature already. If we look at pH, I think that's an area that doesn't get too many people talking about it. In a way that you could potentially temporarily lower pH would be some high intensity interval training. And the biggest mistake people make with that is they just do things that are really hard, but they don't look at what the actual output is. Right. So everyone's heard of the Tabata, training, which is 170% of VO2 max. And then all of a sudden, everything became Tabata training. It's like, I'm going to do Tabata training, right arm preacher curls, right? It just doesn't work that way. You want to look at the output. And if you're doing something like that, a bike, a rower, things where you can get a lot of muscle involved in it. And ideally, something that's going to tell you what your actual output was. So you want to hit that pretty hard, 10, 20, 30 seconds, kind of a Wingate type protocol. And then my bias for people who are new to it is have almost complete rest. And so when you do that second interval, you want to get at least within 10% of that first interval. You want to teach your body to get to that high output state first, do that over many weeks to months, and then you can start collapsing the time periods and hold that high output there, which creates a lot of hydrogen ions that go into the muscle and then get dumped into the blood.
Right. And don't load with beta alanine before doing this. Because
potentially maybe not. That's debatable. Does it change the adaptations? Because you're correct, that is potentially a buffer via intramuscular carnosine. So the argument there is, does that little buffering increase the output and therefore allow you to do a little bit more, which might be beneficial? Or does it dampen down the potential adaptation because you're sort of providing the raw materials for it? My bias is I'd probably go with more of the performance right now based on the literature.
So in other words, you would use beta alanine.
I would. So I would usually, so I do what's called a eustress and a distress model. So eustress, everything to try to increase performance as best you can. And then if I really feel like I've kind of maximized that ceiling, I may go through a period of time where I would pull it out for, 2 months, see what level I can hit there without it. And then I would add it back in again and see if do I get even a little bit higher level at that point.
Fascinating. So as the name implies, high intensity interval training is very tough on the body. Should it be sparingly? Should you do it instead of cardio?
Yeah, so most people, I think, probably do what they think is high intensity interval training, most likely too early and too soon. If your VO2 max, so your aerobic capacity is real low, I would do more old school base building, zone 2, long duration type stuff. Once that's pretty decent, like if you're doing really true high intensity work, maybe once, maybe twice a week, right? You probably don't need a whole lot of it for most people, unless you're a very advanced athlete. I think most people just go and do something very hard, and they do it too often and too soon. And if we look at their output,
then they don't do it anymore at all.
And then they quit. They're like, "Oh, this sucks. I didn't see any adaptations from this. I'm out."
Right. It's funny because high intensity interval training has been shown to do something magical to visceral fat.
Potentially, yeah, in some of the studies.
Yeah, visceral fat is hard to get at. And it's hard to get your body to get rid of it. And it's also what I like to call, Mark Bell thinks it's funny, I call visceral fat radioactive fat. Because it's the fat that damages you. It's the fat that spins off lots of inflammatory cytokines. It crowds organs. It does all sorts of horrible stuff. And there's a couple good studies that show that, if you have like an Airdyne bicycle, if you start using that twice a week and do intervals, and it doesn't even have to be anything crazy. You can do 6 intervals, where you coast along for a minute and a half, and then you give it everything you got for 30 seconds. And then and like you said, you can almost completely rest, keep moving, keep the blood flowing, but you can almost completely rest. And you could do 5 or 6 of those twice a week, and they see visceral fat go like that. It's amazing.
Yeah, and if I remember right, some of those original studies, it seemed to be specific to biking. I think they compared biking to running, if I remember correctly. In biking, they saw more of a change than running, if I remember right.
Well, because number one, you can really go a lot harder on a bike than you can.
Yeah, it's definitely different.
Your ability to sprint and it plays a role in running, where your ability to pedal a bike is pretty academic, and that's why that company Carol, they were an artificial intelligent bike. While they didn't do well because I think their price model was a problem. Their
very expensive.
Great. Yeah, and then it had a subscription. You had to keep paying. But yeah, so that's the nice thing about high intensity interval training. For years, we've heard that vitamin C and or powerful antioxidants can actually keep you from seeing the benefits of exercise by stalling mitochondrial adaptation. I know people, Mike O'Hearn is one of them. Mike takes 10 grams of vitamin C a day, and it doesn't seem like it's hampered his ability. I mean, his birthday squats are crazy. I don't know if he's still doing them, but I mean, he used to do like 40. When he turned 40, he did like 40 squats in a row with 315. It's like that's insane,
Jesus.
Right? So, what are your thoughts on antioxidants? Good idea? Bad idea?
In terms of inhibiting progress from exercise, a lot of that was kind of mechanistic signaling based stuff. Some of the studies that were done in mice did not necessarily pan out in humans. There's some data, if I remember correctly, vitamin C and vitamin E at high doses may have an effect in humans. Some of them, like NAC, might actually be slightly ergogenic for exercise. And the ones that tend to be more derived from, vegetables and fruits, etc., they didn't seem to have much of an effect, right? I haven't seen any studies showing that no matter how many fruits and vegetables you ate, I haven't seen any effect upon exercise itself. So, and even then, how much of an effect is hard to show in terms of performance or muscle changes too. So I think there's probably something there. We know you do need some of those reaction oxygen species. They serve a signaling effect. to trigger all the downstream effects. And if you completely wash out all of those, there is some changes. But I always go back to, and you've talked about this on your show, the work with NSAIDs, right? So some of the work on NSAIDs, especially in animal models, showed that it was horrible for hypertrophy. And then Trappy did an older study in older people looking at NSAIDs, and it was mildly anabolic in those people. So again, the human effects and age and everything else make it a little bit more complicated.
And the universe of your individual level of inflammation, the reason it's
Correct.
great for old people is because their bodies tend to be inflamed.
Correct. Yes.
And then you exercise and you have this little pip of inflammation that's competing with all this other inflammation in your body. And the body goes, we're not worried about that. We're putting this body out. So when you take an NSAID as an older person, or it's anything that has some powerful anti-inflammatory effects like fish oil or eat more salmon, you actually build muscle faster, which is not true of young people because they don't have that level of inflammation. So really what the NSAID is going to do is suppress the growth of the muscles. It's and that's the problem today. And that's what frustrates me about gurus. And that's why I'll be off the air by 2024. No, I'm serious. I've got something else I'm going to be doing. The noise level today out there from the gurus, and they want you to believe that this one thing is all it takes to do whatever, just this one thing. And it's all bullshit. And I don't even want to be in the same silo anymore, to be honest with you. But yeah, it's fascinating to me about antioxidants. There is one antioxidant that I'm finding. There's a company called Astareal.
Yeah, astaxanthin.
They have some interesting studies about astaxanthin actually provoking protein synthesis.
It might. It's in terms of products, that's one of the, I think, the most interesting. So I got into that like 12 years ago when they had some very cool rat studies that showed massive increases in endurance performance. And it was, non-stimulatory, it was potentially beneficial in health. The human performance studies, I would say, are still very mixed. That level of endurance performance hasn't really panned out. But it's pretty fascinating as a red carotenoid. It doesn't appear to spin off as many pro-oxidants. Has very unique properties where it'll sit inside the membrane, basically, and stabilize the membrane, protecting against potentially UV damage and all sorts of stuff. It's very fascinating compound.
In fact, I just remembered that Taleb said the reason vitamin C works is through hormesis. He said vitamin C is a pro-oxidant,
right,
that makes your body produce more antioxidants.
Yep, that's one of the theories. And yeah, I would probably agree. I mean, there's even some dispute about high-level vitamin C orally taken versus an IV. Like those might have different effects. So yeah, it's not as simple as this compound is good or bad. We all know you need some vitamin C. It's an essential thing. If you take a whole bunch of it, is it at some point becoming such a pro-oxidant that it's an issue? Maybe. If you take some, maybe you need a pro-oxidant to kind of hit some of those signaling pathways to trigger the downstream effects. So everybody wants to know, is it good or bad? And it's like, the answer with most things is it depends on what do you got going on? What's your inflammation? What's your status?
Joel Green was watching earlier. I'm sure he's not watching now, but Joel has a favorite saying it's called baby talk. Oh, this is good. That's bad. It's like, that's how babies talk. And it's not. This science is not about baby talk. What's good, it's good in this circumstance. It's bad in that circumstance. It doesn't do anything in this circumstance. I mean, we really suck at this because we don't want to acknowledge how complex we are. We're so complex. We're going to take a second break, and when we come back, we'll wrap up the interview. Stay with us. P3OM from Bioptimizers is a patented prebiotic and probiotic supplement with Lactobacillus plantarum OM. It has now been upgraded to P3OM 2.0 with the addition of a superfood formulation that makes it 2 times stronger, as well as optimizes L. plantarum's strength. So it's more powerful than ever, which means that not only will it help you completely digest all animal proteins, it also reduces cortisol, causes deep relaxation and better sleep, and reduces stress. Go to shrnetwork.biz/P3-OM today and use the code SHR10 to save 10% off. There have been no real breakthroughs in resistance training for over 200 years. Whether it's pulleys or free weight, they all depend on gravity and the angles associated with gravity's effect directly on the weight. All of that has changed with the ARX machine. ARX stands for adaptive resistance. The ARX machine uses a 25 horsepower motor. You are literally fighting against a 25 horsepower motor, so every single rep is your 1 rep maximum at that moment in time. But ARX leverages another technique that has been known to produce rapid muscle gains and strength, and that is it leverages the eccentric or negative portion of the rep, which completely blows every other exercise and resistance training product out of the water. Go to shrnetwork.biz/ARX and discover the future of resistance training. Merrick Health is a premium telehealth platform that connects customers with partnered providers from the comfort of your home. Merrick provides concierge service with your very own patient care provider as your health advocate. You'll go over all your needs and goals, from improving sexual function, hair loss prevention, increased muscle, fat loss, and overall improved performance. Prescribed treatment options can be ordered and shipped directly to you if you meet the requirements, all from the comfort of your home. Go to shrnetwork.biz/Merrick Health. That's MAREKHEALTH, and order your comprehensives and get 10% off with code SHR. Don't forget to add the lab analysis to have results reviewed with potential over-the-counter supplements or treatment recommendations. That's shrnetwork.biz/Merrick Health and use code SHR at checkout. Or order your own desired labs with code SHR and get 10% off your first lab order. Remember those rectangular toaster pastries you used to love when you were a kid? Well, Legendary Foods has just made them better. The new cake-style tasty pastry is like nothing you've ever had before. With 20 grams of high-quality protein and less than 1 gram of sugar, you'll feel like you're cheating, but you're not. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use the code SHR10 to save 10% off your purchase of tasty pastries. Now available in cookies and cream, red velvet cake, birthday cake, blueberry, strawberry, brown sugar cinnamon, and hot fudge sundae. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use code SHR10 today.
Spit that out right now. This is the Superhuman Channel.
Welcome back. So I got to plug this. This is a little shameless pimping of my own. I always say I'm going to be off the air by 2024, and this is the reason why. I have invented a device called the Gun Leash. It's a postage stamp size transmitter that attaches to your gun and keeps you from losing it. Lost guns are a huge problem today. Those of us who carry guns are 300 times more likely to lose our gun and or have it stolen off our person. This is not talking about guns that are stolen from home. There's gun safes for that. That translates to 500,000 guns a year that are lost or stolen by people who carry them. 15% of those guns will end up being used in the commission of a crime. My hope is that my invention will take about 75,000 guns a year out of criminals' hands. We are in the angel fund round. If you are an accredited investor, according to the SEC's 506C, email me at onair@superhumanradio.net, and I will give you all the details of the investment, and the buy-in is very, very low. In January, we go to crowdfunding, so we'll stop doing angel funding right now. So the opportunity to get in on this will probably be here. Let me know if you're interested. I'm happy to do a presentation. Thank you. Yeah, I'm getting out of this. I'm going to leave this. You know who drives me crazy? The guy on YouTube who's hanging. Do you think losing weight is about keto? And I don't know if you've ever seen him. He's a young guy. You know,
he tends to follow all my videos around.
Well, here's the thing. He looks like he's maybe 20 in early 30s, maybe at best. I used to do drugs at 30 and I was lean. I was a cocaine alcoholic living in Las Vegas, chasing whores, eating shit food, and I looked amazing. Like, get to 64 and then come and hang and tell me what works for you. Because I'm 64 and I'm still building muscle at 64. And it's not because of the drugs, because you got to get up and work out too. Nothing happens because of the drugs. Yeah, he drives me crazy, that guy. I guess God bless him. He's doing something, but I'm so tired of that's what I'm tired of. I'm tired of all this bullshit, regurgitation, and it's like playing telephone. Every time somebody says something, the next person who says it different. It changes. It morphs into something else that it was never meant to be. So I'm out. 2024. That's it. You'll miss me. You're all gonna miss me. Anyway, what have we missed in this discussion, Michael?
I mean, the big thing I would add is based on physiologic flexibility. I think that's another way to get to true longevity. You had talked about muscle, which I 100% agree with, especially lower body strength, grip strength, and then also VO2 max, so aerobic capacity. Those three are like the real big markers for longevity. And I think even within that, the better we're able to precondition or to choose to stress our bodies and our physiology in different ways ahead of time. So we get those positive adaptations, the adaptive, homeostasis. I think we're just going to be in a much better off position long-term in regards to longevity and just overall feeling a lot better too in performance.
And you know what the sad thing is? I was just sitting here thinking, like, how many doctors I'd like to send this to. This
sure.
entire this is completely missed by the medical orthodoxy. They think the only way that, first of all, medical orthodoxy does not believe that food plays any role in disease etiology. They don't. Otherwise, they tell people to eat different. They wait until you're full-blown diabetic and then they prescribe a drug. And when you talk to doctors, they say, well, we would tell people to diet and exercise, but it's hard enough to get them to take their drugs. Did you ever think that people really struggle with the idea of taking drugs? I know my mother never wanted to take the drugs that they prescribed for her. They're afraid of them. So maybe that's part of the reason why that you have poor patient compliance when it comes to taking drugs. Maybe patients would be willing to, and here's the if insurance would pay for the gym membership, which many do now, but also pay for nutrition that's not ADA driven. Oh yeah, eat lots of pasta and bread, get your healthy grains. Like, we're tired of this bullshit. It didn't work. We have an N equals many study in front of us from the 70s to today. Everything the government endorsed dietarily led us to being the single most obese that we've ever been in this nation, the single sickest that we've ever been in this nation. I think it's time for the government to get out of our pantries and stop making those kind of decisions, untie the hands of doctors so that they're not called upon by the medical board of licensure and threatened because they told somebody, I'm not going to give you metformin. I am going to prescribe diet and exercise for you. I mean, this is a sad situation. It's just really, really sad because the level of unhealth in this country today is a big factor in why this country is struggling financially. We have a large portion of the population that is on social services because they can't get out of a chair anymore. I mean, really? You realize I was 330 pounds. It took me 15 years to become 330 pounds. Didn't happen overnight. I watched myself every day get fatter and fatter and fatter and fatter and fatter and fatter until I was like, oh my God. And that's when I developed my heart problem. Then when the thought of my life ending, then I was like, okay, I'm done. But you see these people, they have to ride the cart around the store to get the food. This is, we're watching idiocracy here. We're watching it happen right in front of our eyes. What was that other Wall-E? Remember Wall-E?
Yes.
It was prophetic. Like that's who we're becoming. And doctors really have an opportunity, and I would say an obligation to like start to understand what people really need to be doing. And it's not taking metformin. It's not.
Yeah. And the hard part is the whole entire system is set up for when you are sick. It's not set up as a preventative system. And unfortunately, physicians are in a hard spot too, because they get 15 minutes at best with each patient. Nutrition and exercise generally isn't taught in any medical school other than a couple hours. So the ones who are better at it have to spend a ton of time outside educating themselves. And then they're shoved back into a system that's, doesn't really care about preventative stuff at all. And so until that entire system and everything changes, I think it's going to be incredibly difficult, unfortunately.
I understand that, but a doctor with a large practice could hire a guy like you who then hires personal trainers and gives them,
Oh, sure. It should be an option.
Yeah, orthopedic surgeons have a rehab division, right? You go have your knee replaced, they send you to rehab. That's part of their practice. They have people who know how to help you start to ambulate again. And why don't we have that for people who are obese and dying and metabolically broken? Why don't we have a rehab in every doctor's office? Okay, I'm going to send you downstairs. They're going to lay out your nutrition, how many calories you need to eat a day. We're going to set you up with an exercise program 3 days a week. You're going to come in here. We're going to marshal you through it until you can do it on your own. I mean, doctors, they can do that, and it'll be a moneymaker for them. It'd be a moneymaker. This is no excuse that they don't have the time or they didn't have the proper education. They hire people to do things. They hire a billing manager who knows how to data entry, and they don't do that. They didn't teach that in medical school. No, they don't believe it makes a difference. That's what I think. They don't believe it makes a difference.
I think there's also not as well of a measured outcome. So orthopedics in general are pretty good at measuring outcomes of, because if you're going to look around for a doc to do, say, an ACL, you're going to ask them like, hey, what are your outcomes for this procedure? So it's in their best interest and in their business best interest to have, good physical therapists and only certain people they send to. I don't see that sort of check and balance at all with general practice. It's very different. So it'd be nice, exactly what you said, if they had some referral of like, hey, here's your options. You can either take this drug or we have this other referral program. And then your outcomes are actually measured at the end result of that entire program. So then you can go around and look for places that have a higher result when you have questions in that area.
But you would only do that if you gave a shit.
Well, yeah, you have to care, of course. Yeah, yeah.
They don't care. They don't care. They're overwhelmed. They're scrutinized by all these agencies and the insurance companies. It's like, I remember a friend who was an accountant, and we were talking. This is when I lived in Las Vegas. And he says, whenever my client calls me and says, do you think I should do this? You think I should do that? He says, no. And I said, why? He says, because I'll never get in trouble telling him no. If I tell him to yes, and he does, and it doesn't work out, then I'm going to get in trouble. Yeah. And I kind of feel like that's where doctors are right now. They're like, I don't want to get in trouble, especially after this pandemic. So many doctors got crushed by thinking outside the box, by trying to really help people. It's like whack-a-mole. It's like, why would I want to do this? What's the benefit? Well, people would get better. Yeah, but if something goes wrong, they sue me. If I put somebody on a diet and a blood vessel bursts that was ready to burst anyway, I'm going to get sued because I put her on the diet right before the blood. I get it. I understand, but there's got to be a change somehow, because we can't let these people actually. I'm saying this and then I'm thinking maybe not. Maybe this is a good evolutionary selection pressure. Maybe 200 years from now, all these obese people who don't have discipline, who don't want to move, they just want to live this way. Maybe they won't have children, so their gene pool will kind of be thinned. I know that's a really sad way to look at it, but that's how evolution is. Evolution isn't nice. Selection pressures aren't kind.
And the hard part is, like, we are physiologically wired in our current environment to be efficient. So it is actually an efficiency thing to go to the fast food and to get high calories for $5 or press buttons on my phone and have it show up at my door. We're actually physiologically wired because that was a huge advantage, back, several 100,000 years ago or however back in time. Now have the exact same physiology, but we're in an environment of complete excess where we can get massive amounts of calories for like no effort. So you have to then apply more effort beyond that to, make different choices, to exercise, to do the things that are actually hard And that a lot of times goes against how our physiology is wired at baseline.
Daniel Lieberman said it the best on the show. He said, if you go out to a hunter-gatherer population and you have 2 banana trees and you put an escalator in front of one, they'll take the escalator.
Of course. Yes.
Why climb the tree and expend energy? They'll take the escalator because we are. You're right. We're programmed to consume energy and conserve energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why it makes it so hard.
I know.
Yeah.
But we're all that way. But somehow some of us, I don't know, we handle it differently. Go to MikeTNelson.com. Pick out one of the great books. He's got lots of free stuff there that you'll learn. It's a wealth of information. Mike is not a zealot. He's not the liver king. He's a sensible guy who follows the science and gets results, and you'll benefit. MikeTNelson.com. Mike, thanks for taking time to come on the show today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Carl. I really appreciate it. Thanks again.
Okay, take care. And that's it for me. I don't have any show tomorrow, and I am happy because it's going to be 80 degrees, and I got a motorcycle waiting for my ass to get in it or get on it. All right, look, don't forget, muscle is metabolic currency, so get into the gym and make a deposit today. Stronger is younger. If you're stronger tomorrow than you were today, you got younger. Pass the show around. You never know who you're going to help. We'll see you next week. Thank you.